So SHOT Show in the handgun segment this year was pretty disappointing unless you have a very particular taste in pistols and a very healthy budget to afford those pistols. And I need to show you all of the stuff kind of at the show because now I feel like some pieces have clicked into place where we are going to begin to witness the beginning of the end of the mighty Glock pistols. And no, they're not going to go away. They're not going to stop working. I know exactly what you're going to say, but I think that Glock has some wood to chop as a brand and a product if it wants to enjoy just the same spot that it's been enjoying in the market for years. But we need to show the work before we get there. Effectively, what we're seeing is sort of two different markets in the pistol segment. There is kind of the I want to buy a gun market that is previously what guns used to cost and where Glock's price currently kind of lines up. And then there's sort of the enthusiast set, which has a 4-figure price tag plus. So on that low end price point, what was at the show and was announced prior to the show was the Ruger RXM, and I will get one of these and review it eventually for the channel. But what I observed with that gun was a very capable Gen 3 priced Glock that has a modular fire control unit. And because Magpul made the grips and not Ruger, feels pretty amazing in hand. Like I don't know why you would necessarily pick up an old Gen 3 when you can pick up one of these for less money and pretty much everything about it feels better. And at sort of that same price point, Rost Martin introduced a new compact version of their gun and a ported barrel version of it as well. You're gonna start to notice a theme with this year's product offerings at SHOT Show. This is the first. Big hint there. And probably the most full-featured gun at kind of the lower price point was the announcement of the new Canik MC9 Prime that is made in the United States. It basically takes everything I like about the TTI Combat, puts it on their MC9 LS sized gun, which in my opinion is the best size of their skinny guns. And it has 3 ports on the barrel and amazing grip texture and the rival trigger shoe. It's made in America. And they have their new Mechanic MO4 line of optics, which actually looks really good. It's an enclosed emitter optic for a very reasonable price. We'll come back to accessories sort of at the end. Now, Glock did have new product for the show with their new Koa line of pistols that are a new optic cut with the new Aimpoint optic. The Aimpoint Koa, the actual optic itself, is a really nice optic. The only problem is that I don't think anyone is going to adopt that footprint who's not Glock. It's a fantastic optic. It's way better than the P2, which in my opinion was kind of the mid-enclosed emitter optic. It just was outcompeted by everything. And then kind of the nail was put in the coffin for that optic when the RCR was announced. But it just has a weird footprint, and that's gonna kind of get us scratching around that 4-figure price point as we graduate into the more expensive guns. Girsan was there with their new 2311 match series of pistols. They had 2 versions. They had a 5-inch version for competition shooters in USPSA, which was a steel frame and took RMSE footprint optics, and they had the aluminum frame version that is basically like an XC, and I'm hoping to check out one of those pistols, so subscribe if you want to see more info on that. The guns do feel improved from the 2311 that I checked out last year, whenever it was they were announced. Walter had a whole series of compensated guns coming to you from the factory, but the kind of the crown jewel in that collection is the Walter PDP-F comp that they have. It's a PMM style proprietary threaded compensator that basically makes a super capable little carry gun. The PDP-F is still slept on as an awesome carry gun, but again, it's a bunch of really nice guns that are kind of in that 4-figure price point and have compensators. Now, you Smith & Wesson bros, I did go by the Smith & Wesson booth trying to check out the new steel frame version of the M&P, but they had kind of a weird system where you had to like check in and make an appointment and come back, and I didn't have a lot of time at the show, so sorry, no video on the Smith gun. I did get to handle it. They make weird choices on the product. That steel frame gun that I got to pick up is a 5-inch gun with a traditional thread on compensator, which makes the gun absolutely massive, super long, and that compensator isn't allowed in any of the competitions, at least in that format, because it doesn't fit in the box in IDPA, probably. I didn't have one to check, but I'm guessing it probably won't fit in that box, and you can't use the compensator in USPSA. So it is an enthusiast gun for people who like to think of owning a competition gun, but don't compete. I'm sure you can swap the barrel and make it work. I'm sure Hunter Constantine's gonna destroy people at matches with one in the near future. Beretta similarly had some new compensated guns with their Gara and their Corsa guns that are traditional 92s with a traditional thread on compensator. Beretta also had a new version of the 92X Performance with the dark trim, has all the Tony system parts installed on the gun from the factory. Those are a really promising feeling. They had some new JJ Ricasa grips and the prettiest 92s that I have ever seen. The Blackbeard's custom kind of battle-worn finish, it won the battle-worn game. Like, that gun was gorgeous. They also had terrible lighting and pushy foreigners who elbowed my cameraman when we were trying to record at the booth. So I never did a video on it. Sorry, Beretta Burrows. I'd love to check out some of the cooler new 92s you guys got. Seriously, this couple like boxed out my cameraman as he was rolling to go pick up the gun. It was really remarkable. And kind of in that same price point, I did get to check out the new Alpha Foxtrot Romulus. Previously, the Romulus was only available with an RMSC cut. They now have optic footprints, but they have ported and compensated versions of the Romulus. So there are new options there. It's a pretty nice feeling 2011. The machining feels really good. The finishing on them is excellent. They're machined kind of in South Korea and assembled in Duluth, Georgia. So, you know, it's kind of a hybrid model, but they seem pretty nice. Bull Armory was there with 3 notable guns in tow and 1 new permutation of the guns. First, they're announcing that they're doing all tool steel parts in their guns. So they're getting rid of the MIM stuff, and they've been doing it for a while. So if you have a very recent manufacturer, there's a good chance you still have tool steel parts in your gun. But they had the new EDC Compact, which is what the ultralight should have been all along as far as I was concerned. I'm actually really excited about that gun because I think it's gonna carry amazing and shoot amazing. They introduced new stainless versions of the TAC series of guns, which honestly were my favorite looking guns at the show. I just think they look super classy and kind of that silver on black look. They had the new Blaze, which is the USPSA limited optics gun. I'm actually pretty excited to check out one of those. It's got shielded safety now with their new optics cuts. It seemed pretty darn nice. And they had the TAC comp, which is V6 ports plus a compensator. Ports and compensator on the same gun. I'm actually pretty excited about that one. Kind of in that price point, and we'll pretend that this Staccato P is a new P4. I should be picking up my P4 today. But Staccato announced their new Glock Mag 2011, and this is actually disruptive, and this, pay attention because the argument at the end depends on this. They basically built a gun for SWAT operators, which is what they want. It's drop safe, it takes a Glock pattern magazine, and not only does it take a Glock pattern magazine, it takes a significantly better magazine than a traditional Glock mag with the new Metgar mag. And that Metgar mag sells for $20. But the new HD series of the Staccato pistols is everything you love about Staccatos and more. It's got a lower bore axis. It's built on 9mm geometry, not 45 geometry like the Legacy 2011s are. It's got ambi controls, no grip safety, and it shares like 4 parts with these Legacy 2011s. And I think those parts are like the barrel link, the barrel link pin, maybe the hammer spring. I mean, I really have no idea. They were very different guns, feel very different in hand, but the trigger on the guns pulls very similar to what you'd be used to on kind of Staccato P. That gun seemed really interesting. I spoke with a lot of my cop buddies after the show, and everybody to a man seemed pretty excited about that gun. I'm more excited about that Metgar magazine because that is the magazine to get for Glock pistols at this point. The old polymer Glock mags, if they ever bind up and you rip one, you know that the tube's useless. That's going to go away with the new Metgar mag, so I'm excited for those. In that same price point, kind of the homework that Staccato kind of copied off of is the new OA Defense 2311 Pro and 2311 Pro Elite. 2311 Pro is a ported version of the 2311 with an enhanced trigger and a different color frame, whereas the Pro Elite is getting rid of the polymer grip and putting on an aluminum grip. And it's built around the P320 magazine, and it's kind of interesting because the concept for the OA Defense 2311, it's basically what Staccato did with the HD series of pistols, the difference being the firing pin block. But if you were to start designing a gun 4 or 5 years ago, you're like, it's gonna cost a couple $1,000 or whatever, you probably wouldn't pick the plastic Glock mag to design it around. So the P320 magazine made the best case at the time because it had wide adoption in departments kind of before the P320 started coming on hard times here recently, lawsuits and such. So that magazine really made sense at the time. It's still a great magazine. Look, I get it. I like ports and compensators. It's just everybody did ports and compensators this year. Or at the show, it felt like if they didn't do that, then they just painted one of their guns gold, and like that was the draw to the booth. That was like everything at SHOT Show. Now, I'm sure there are a lot more pistols at SHOT Show that are worthy of discussion, but that's a kind of a nice cross-cut and sampling to talk about it. Okay, so I needed to show my work so we could talk about Glock and kind of what I kind of observed the swirling of the market means with Glock. Now, if you think about the Glock pistol and how it has been positioned and how it has been marketed forever, it was the choice of our law enforcement professionals. It's in use in military and all this kind of stuff. Basically, the types of guys that the civilian buyers would kind of idolize when they want to be thought of as dangerous and getting into kind of the handgun space. Glocks were kind of the move for that. Now, Staccato just kind of jumped in there, and they've been doing it for a while, ever since they changed their name to Staccato, but they've been trying to get their guns in the holsters of the SWAT instructors, the SWAT team guys, you know, the patrol guys who take their, you know, craft very seriously. And with that new HD series of pistols, I think they've done it in a way that they haven't previously, because it is drop safe, it's built on 9mm geometry, and it takes Glock mags. They've effectively created a new meta for the people doing the instruction. So that means all of the new patrol cops coming up that are going through academy and stuff like that, they're likely to get instruction from people with Staccatos in their holsters. So that means the duty weapon that the new beat cops want to aspire to is probably likely the Staccato. Considering the new HD series are sold at a very steep discount to law enforcement, it's still a lot of money, but it is not out of the reach of most. So ipso facto, now the new gun owner who's getting into that space is eventually going to see that Staccato is in all of the holsters of the invincible ninjas that they see on Instagram. And they're going to think that like the bar of a professional grade weapon is now kind of that Staccato thing. There's still obviously going to be the like, I can't afford a Staccato, so buy a Glock sort of price point. We'll talk about that in a second. But Glock has been completely cut off at the top end by the new Staccato HD series of pistol. And they really did kind of spike the football at SHOT Show, because the video that was facing the Glock booth had a sizzle reel that showed somebody shooting a Glock on a range going, oh, pow, pow, pow. And then they kind of look at the thing and throw it in the trash. They played all the sizzle for the HD P4. And then at the end of the video, it had the silhouette of the HD series Staccato. Then the American flag on a shield came up behind it and said Staccato HD, American Perfection, facing the Glock booth the year after the Alchemy guy was banned from the show for holding up their horse husbandry sign at the Glock booth, while somebody with the last name Glock was there. It was very aggressive. But story time out of the way. So you've got the Staccato at the high end that is now going to become kind of the gun on a pedestal that people want to aspire to. And at the same time, the new Mech-Gar magazines, coupled with the existence of the Magpul Glock magazines, you have like a $10 magazine and you have a $20 magazine. And the $20 magazine fixes everything wrong with the stupid plastic tube of the Glock mag. Let's be really honest, guys. The Glock mag is not a particularly good magazine. It doesn't get as many rounds as it should given its length, because the walls are super fat because they are plastic. The cool thing about Glock mags is that they were inexpensive. That really was it. Now you have a cheaper option, and you have an option that undercuts the $25 price point that OEM Glock mags were selling at, and it's ostensibly a better magazine. You get one more round. It works with the existing plastic mag catches on Glock guns. It won't have the tube get destroyed just by looking at it sideways or stepping on a piece of gravel on the range. You can destroy Glock mags, trust me, ruined several of them. So you've got those two magazines in that space, and that's important because a lot of profitability in firearm space is through magazine sales. It's kind of like the razor blade type model. So Glock is not really making a compelling reason to buy their magazines anymore. I could see at a department level, I'm sure Mech-Gar has good pricing and you could get better magazines for less at a department level for like cops. But even at the individual level, I will never buy another OEM Glock magazine again because the Mech-Gar magazine is better. Doesn't mean I'm gonna throw away my old Glock magazines, but at the same time, I just don't see a case to make that magazine. So Glock has a couple options. They're probably gonna have to revise the price point on that magazine down from like kind of the $25 to $30 they like to try and sell at to kind of the $16, maybe $17 price point, which is a dramatic cut to margin. Like at that point, they're kind of sandwiched in between a superior option with the mech gar and a cheaper but functional option with the Magpul. And it's like, what do you really get by staying in the middle at that price point? Like, why not spend a little more and get a better magazine, or spend less and get a functional magazine? It just doesn't really, it doesn't compete well anymore. And at the same time, the Walther PDP is now quietly selling for about $500. And if you get a PDP next to a Glock in hand at kind of the consumer level, it's very difficult to pick up a Glock and think, I'm leaving here with this when the PDP kind of exists. I get that the PDP has its own set of issues. I'm just saying the experience when you put them in hand, one feels like a premium pistol and one feels like a, you know, commoditized manufactured good. And at the same time, at the civilian level, you have the Ruger RXM. If you want the Glock pattern of magazine now, you can get it for less than Gen 3 pricing with a modular fire control unit in a gun that feels better than a Gen 3 Glock. So it seems on every front, the Glock brand is just being assaulted. At the high end, you have Staccato. At kind of the mid price point, you have a bevy of Glock clones and the PDP. And then at the low price point, Ruger's now in there making, you know, a better mousetrap, so to speak. And the magazine profitability has been cut out. That doesn't mean that it's not gonna be like a light switch moment where all of a sudden the Glocks stop working across the country. That is certainly not gonna be the case. But I think what you're gonna witness in kind of the online banter space is that the defense of the Glock pistol is gonna sound a lot more like kind of the revolver guys and the 1911 guys on why the platform is kind of still around. I used to compete with Glock pistols. I still, you know, appreciate their simplicity. At the department level, it probably makes sense because one guy with a punch can service a bunch of guns in basically no time. All those other guns are more fiddly and difficult to deal with, but the guns have gotten so good that they work in kind of normal to austere conditions the same way Glocks do. It's just a very, very crowded field. And I have a hard time imagining that Glock can just sit back and print the same thing that they've been printing for the past nearly 50 years and continue to enjoy their space in the market. I expect their position is going to steadily erode as we begin to get more and more new shooters into the space. It's a hyper-competitive field in the pistol segment right now. And I don't think that any one gun is going to invalidate the Glock, but I do think the constellation of market factors and the eroding profitability of the mag sales is going to make a dent in Glock's bottom line, because I think they're gonna probably need to shift to just focusing on contract sales. And you can look at FN and CZ and Colt, and that didn't do great things for their pistol in kind of the American civilian marketplace. So I don't know. If you work in a gun store, I'd be curious to know, are the Glocks still the #1 mover for you guys? Are you seeing other brands start to move off the shelves in increasing numbers as people get in and put different types of guns in their hands? If you're a law enforcement guy, I'd be curious to know, does the Staccato HD series of pistol do anything for you and what you think your department is going to do? Are you personally interested in potentially upgrading your Glock to one of those? But at the same time, the subtleties of what it likely means for Glock is going to be interesting. I'll be very interested to see if we ever see that Gen 6. It feels like the time would be appropriate. I appreciate you guys watching, and you can check out this playlist for all the videos I did at SHOT Show 2025.